Before we had magicians like Gandalf, Merlin, Dumbledore, Doctor Strange, in modern fantasy fiction, people had been telling stories of gods, spirits, and sorcerers with astonishing powers. Circe, the daughter of Helios, turned Odysseus' men into pigs. With just a staff in the book of Exodus, Moses summoned plagues upon the people of Egypt and parted the Red Sea. In all these tales, one thing is common: the magic displayed isn't explained. It was just felt. It was mysterious, divine, and often unpredictable. In Greek mythology, the big boss, Zeus, easily calls lightning bolts from the sky. Hermes had sandals with wings that let him fly, the original Air Force Ones. Thor in Norse mythology has a mighty hammer that could literally level mountains. In one tale, Thor uses Mjolnir to flatten an entire army of frost giants. I even dare to say that if we tried to visualize the force produced by Thor's hammer, it would rival the energy output of tactical nukes. Mjolnir is a guided missile made of rage and godliness. But the thing is that none of these myths and legends paused to explain a magic system. Zeus is not stopping to explain the mana cost of a thunderbolt spell. He just gets it done. You get a thunderbolt. You get a thunderbolt. Everybody gets a thunderbolt. Magic in myths was usually an extension of divine will or the forces of nature. In other words, it was beyond mere mortal understanding. And that was the whole freaking point. Magic was awesome precisely because it broke all the rules of reality without any explanation. It was the domain of gods and chosen heroes. It worked because of belief and wonder. Nobody knew the technical details, and frankly, nobody gave a damn. This pattern continued into later legends like the Arthurian tales in medieval Europe. In the stories of King Arthur, Merlin is a wise mage guiding Arthur's destiny. But how does Merlin's magic work? Nobody knows. He just does it. But there's also something new here. Merlin's magic, while still mysterious, is tied to knowledge. He is often depicted as a scholar or an advisor, hinting that his power comes from wisdom and learning rather than sheer godly might. In the medieval age, people believed that gaining knowledge of secret practices like alchemy would allow them to harness mysterious forces. Merlin was said to be a powerful alchemist, but still, the rules of his magic aren't spelled out for us. Merlin could shapeshift, see the future, and cast illusions, all without the help of even a spell book. His magic remained soft. It was mostly unpredictable, more of an art than a science. I will explain what soft magic is in a bit. It wasn't only in the West that magic was portrayed like this. Eastern folklore and mythology are also full of stories of mythical beings. In Chinese legend, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, could shapeshift into 72 transformations, somersault across clouds, and even hold his own against heaven's armies. Do we get a good explanation of how he does all that? Nope. It's usually attributed to Taoist teachings or heavenly artifacts, but it's largely because he's a magical monkey, simple as that. A fox spirit or kitsune in Japanese folklore would shapeshift into a human and play tricks on people because that's just what fox spirits do. In these stories, there was nothing like a magic system. They were just magical beings who did miraculous things that inspired wonder or caution. The magic was intertwined with the spiritual and the unknown. In early fiction, magic was a mystic and elusive force. If something absolutely bonkers happened, like a sword getting pulled from a stone or the freaking sea getting parted in two, you just accepted it as part of the myth or miracle. Magic began as a mystery. It wasn't meant to be figured out. It was meant to be an experience. In early stories, magic served as a symbol of divine approval, of faith, and of nature's power, rather than a logical tool for characters to use. And that approach carried on into the first modern fantasy stories as well. Let's fast forward to the early 20th century, where a professor named Tolkien changed the game. Picture yourself reading The Lord of the Rings for the first time or watching the movies, both count. You meet Gandalf the Grey, an old wizard who can start fires. He also fights a giant, powerful and immortal beast covered in flames. Everything we know about Gandalf is mystical. How does Gandalf's magic work exactly? If your answer is via his staff, or maybe the power of the Valar, or you don't know, you will be exactly right. Tolkien never gives us a textbook answer on how Gandalf or the other Istari got their magic. And you know what? I don't mind at all. The vagueness of the source of Gandalf's magical power is what makes him awesome. He's wise, powerful, and will occasionally throw out a flash of light or a fireball, but mostly he's just mysterious. Tolkien's world has tons of magic in it. There are enchanted rings, ancient spells, immortal elves, and yet it all still feels organic. It is deep magic tied to the world's history rather than a system of rules. Tolkien was hugely influential when it comes to writing about magic. Many fantasy works after him followed the soft magic approach. Soft magic is when the story's magic has unclear or limited explained rules from the audience perspective. The readers and even the characters in the story aren't entirely sure what magic can do or can't do. Magic here is wonder. It is used to inspire. In a soft magic story, when the heroes get into trouble, they don't just escape by whipping out a new spell last minute unless it's something that has been foreshadowed as a prophecy or they are saved by divine intervention. Fantasy author Brandon Sanderson's first law of fantasy writing is an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. What this means is that if your magic is not well understood by readers, you shouldn't have it suddenly fix everything. Characters shouldn't suddenly save the day or resolve a hopeless situation out of nowhere. Instead, use soft magic to create problems or an atmosphere that allows your characters to solve things the hard way, like with their wits and courage. This is exactly what we'll see in The Lord of the Rings. Soft magic is used to create the problem, the One Ring. The solution to the problem is destroying the ring, and it was resolved by the bravery of the heroes and their sacrifice, not by Gandalf snapping his magical fingers. Another example of a series with mostly soft magic is Chronicles of Narnia. The world of Narnia is full of magic. Animals talk and witches turn people to stone. A lion literally sinks the world into existence, but magic here is presented as part of the divine mystery of Narnia. Lewis, being a religious scholar, often used magic as an allegory. Aslan is clearly a symbol of Jesus. He sacrifices himself, dies, and resurrects. Themes like sacrifice, redemption, and fate run throughout the books, but Lewis himself said he didn't write the novels as a strict allegory, called it a supposal, as in what if Christ came to a fantasy world. There are some vague rules though, like Aslan sacrificing himself allows him to invoke deeper magic from before the dawn of time. But these aren't rules you can use predictably. They are more like thematic device. And as a kid reading Chronicles of Narnia, you probably didn't care about how the White Witch could cast an eternal winter. All you cared about was that she was evil and powerful, and when Aslan eventually breaks her spell, you're excited. You're not trying to solve for how he did it, you just accept that he did. Harry Potter also uses soft magic to great effect. Now you might argue that Harry Potter has rules. They literally go to school to learn spells. True, there's a structure. There is a school curriculum, specific spells and wand techniques. But the Harry Potter magic system is actually not very rigorous or logical once you scratch the surface. It is a soft magic system wearing a school uniform. We are not told why saying Wingardium Leviosa makes things float. It just does because it's magic. Plenty of things in the Harry Potter universe just happen with a wave of the hand and saying a Latin word without any deeper explanation. The focus is more on adventure and mystery and not systematically working out magic mechanics. The school Hogwarts might suggest that there are rules, but really, Rowling just introduces new magical elements as needed by the plot without pre-establishing them by any unifying theory of magic. That's how we got the Marauders map, the Horcruxes, and the Deathly Hallows. So I will still categorize Harry Potter as soft magic, certainly softer than what we are about to discuss in the next chapter. Yes, the magic has some rules in the universe, like you can't conjure food from nothing, or how unforgivable curses are restricted. Somebody tell that to Voldemort, but it's not systematically explained to the reader ahead of time. We mostly learn about magical possibilities as Harry does. We discover them organically. Now, let's enter the age of hard magic systems. Alright, let's talk about rules. Don't worry, not the boring kind. These are fun rules, I promise. Sometimes around the late 2000s, fantasy creators started asking, what if magic made sense? What if magic were treated almost like a science or a technology with defined principles? This is when hard magic systems were born. In a hard magic system, the story's magic has clear, specific rules that the audience is aware of. It is magic that the reader or viewer could sit down and explain, at least mostly. Magic here is sort of like an engineering problem. Instead of a wizard did it, no questions asked, hard magic says a wizard did it because of X, Y, and Z rules. And by the way, here's how you could do it too if you lived in this world. This takes out a bit of the mystery, but in return, we get a different kind of excitement. The thrill of understanding and predicting how magic can be used in any scenario. But how did we go from soft magic to hard magic? A few things happened. In the 1960s to 70s, authors like Ursula K. Le Guin toyed with more systematic magic concepts. Le Guin's Earthsea series is a good example of early hard-ish magic. In Earthsea, magic is all about the true names of things. Every creature and object has a secret name in the old speech, and if you know it, you can command that thing. This introduces limitations and rules. A mage can only control what he knows the name of, and using names takes years of effort and wisdom. While it's not explained in crazy detail, it's a consistent system that the plot heavily relies on. Names have power and are inherently mythical, but Le Guin laid down a framework with discipline and study, allowing for magic to move towards a harder system. Around the same time, tabletop gaming was also gaining steam. Dungeons and Dragons came into the scene. While D&D isn't a novel or a movie at the time, its impact on fantasy literature cannot be overstated. In D&D, magic and spells had levels, costs, and effects so that players could play a game with them. There are spell names, how much damage a spell can cause, the range of area a spell can affect, and even how long the spell lasts. If Gandalf's approach to magic was like improvising jazz, D&D was like reading sheet music. It was magic gamified and systemized for play. And guess what? A lot of fantasy writers were also D&D players, so it's no surprise that they started incorporating that system mindset into their fantasy worlds. For example, Otto Brander Sanderson grew up playing D&D and he has become one of the modern champions of hard magic. His work, for example, Mistborn, are textbook examples of hard magic. In Mistborn, certain people known as allomancers can gain powers by ingesting metals and burning them in their bodies. There's a chart of metals, and each metal does a specific thing. Steel lets you push off metals, iron lets you pull metals, tin enhances senses, pewter enhances strength, and so on. And there are also strict limits. If you run out of metal, sorry, you've got no more power. People can also use only one metal, except the rare Mistborn who can use all. Using the power also has side effects. For instance, burning tin makes you vulnerable to bright lights and sounds. As a reader, by the middle of the book, you understand exactly what the magic is all about, what you can do and what you cannot do with it. So when a fight scene happens, it's like you are reading a tactical battle. You can guess how a protagonist will combine the known rules to win. And when they do something creative within the rules, you feel a little proud for getting it. It's a very different but very real satisfaction compared to the awe of soft magic. The Wheel of Time series by author Robert Jordan also features a complex magic system called the One Power. Channelers, who are basically sorcerers in this series, weave the flows of 5 elemental threads to create magical effects. They weave threads of earth, air, fire, water and spirit. The magic is also gender specific. Only women can safely use one half of the power. When men use the other half, they become corrupted and eventually go mad. In the novels, Jordan lays out a lot of ground rules for how channeling works, who can do it and what the risks are. There are entire chapters where characters train to use the power like they are in a strict martial arts class with instructors teaching them which weaves do what and how to use them. The magic is still mystical in origin because the source is kind of a spiritual cosmic force, but operationally, the magic is systematized. By book 4 or 5, readers basically know what's possible or impossible with magic in this world, even though Jordan keeps layering more complexity over 14 books. Even Star Wars went from soft to harder magic over time. The first in the original trilogy was essentially space magic. Then the prequel introduced the idea of midichlorians. These are microscopic organisms that live in the cells and allow some individuals to perceive and interact with the Force. A lot of fans were not happy with this knowledge. Personally, I'm with the folks who prefer the Force to remain a bit mysterious. Did we really need a quasi-scientific explanation for the Force? I don't need a blood test to measure my Jedi potential, but still it shows the trend. Even Star Wars felt the need to quantize its magic. By the 2010s, hard magic systems were so in vogue that some fantasy worlds read almost like role-playing games. There's even the lit RPG subgenre now where characters literally see stats and skill levels as if they're in a video game. In anime also, there was an isekai boom. These are stories where someone from our world gets transported to a fantasy world with game-like rules. In these fantasy worlds, the protagonist basically exploits a hard magic system or power system to become super powerful. The protagonist treats it like a game and often it literally is won. By the end of the 2000s and early 2010s, both Western and Eastern fantasy had embraced the idea of magic as a system. You still had soft magic stories being told like George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, but there was definitely a trend towards giving magic well-defined edges. At the end of the day though, there is no single best way to do magic. Whether you are into the mysterious soft magic system or the carefully structured, rule-heavy hard magic systems, they each bring something unique to the story. But what about you? What's your favorite magic system in fiction and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear what type of magic clicks with you the most. Thanks for sticking around and nerding out with me. Catch you next time.